Hey, are you interested in going to DO school, or you're already in DO school and you want to know what it's like on the other side? Then you came to the right place. Hey, I'm Dr. Katie. I am a brand new, newly minted DO, and I am going to talk to you today about what you should know before you go DO. Let's get started. So, what is a DO? A DO is a doctor of osteopathy. I never really know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I think osteopathy. Okay. So it's not something like brand new. It's actually been around since the 1800s, and it's not the same thing as being a chiropractor. Osteopaths practice OMT, which is osteopathic manipulative treatment. Osteopaths was started in like the 1800s by our founder, Dr. Andrew Taylor Still, who was a physician during the Civil War times. And after his like umpteenth amputation that he had to watch, he's like, there's got to be a better way. He was practicing in that early medicine where there was a lot of amputations and bloodletting, and it wasn't like the evidence based we know and love. And he just thought there was something different. We could do something different. So in, I think it was 1892, he founded the very first school of osteopathic medicine, and we love him because he let men and women into the school at the same time. And he built this school and he built this practice off of the four tenets of osteopathy. So number one is the body is a unit, mind, body, and spirit. Number two, the body is capable of self-regulation and self-healing. Number three, structure and function are interconnected and related. Number four, rational treatment is based on all of those things. And I love it because of that. The fact that the body is a unit, mind, body, and spirit. What happens in your mind impacts your body. What happens in your body impacts your mind, that it is all one thing. And then I also love self-healing. I too believe the body is capable of self-healing. We just need to give it the right tools to do so. So DOs not only learned medicine, but they also learned osteopathic manipulative treatment. And it's kind of hard to explain OMT. I would describe it a little bit as physical therapy. It's kind of using the body's own set functions to heal itself. A lot of it is used for musculoskeletal therapy. It can be used for soft tissues and fascia. Some of the different treatments include like muscle energy, which is kind of like active stretching. You can do like the pops and cracks and clicks. It's a lot of like fascial work as well. Every DO kind of has a different way that they like to practice it, and every DO is right. So one of the very first time that DOs or OMT actually gained recognition was during the 1919 or 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. And the death rate, or the mortality rate, was around 6 to 8%. But the patients that were treated by DOs actually had an improved mortality rate because they were using those osteopathic manipulative treatments on those patients. And if you're curious, it was the chest percussion. So it was help loosen the fluid and the phlegm and the stuff in people's chests, and was helping them survive the flu. Since then, DOs have actually had to fight quite a bit for recognition. Throughout the most of the 20th century, they were excluded from hospitals, federal service, and residencies. That began to change after like the 1960s, when osteopathic medical schools were starting to be a little bit more respected. In 2020 was a huge milestone where the osteopathic and allopathic residencies merged, meaning that all physicians, regardless of the degree, would practice together in residency. So DOs train along MDs and all of our specialties, anywhere from family medicine up to neurosurgery. Today, DOs are fully licensed physicians in all 50 states and most countries. So even though you might not have known about osteopathic medicine in the past, it's not new. It's just finally gaining the recognition that it deserves. All right, there's your history lesson on DOs. I think it's really interesting. It's fun to know where I came from. But let's get into the actual meat of the video. Let's talk about what you should know before you go to a DO school. So number one is, how are DO schools and MD schools or allopathic medical schools different? And since 2020, like I mentioned, the residencies have merged. So there's a lot of talk about how DOs and MDs are the same, or that they practice the same. And while that is true, as soon as you get into residency, as soon as you're practicing, DOs and MDs practice basically the same with the exception of OMT. the education experience is a little different, and I think it's a disservice not to address that. So how's it different? Number one, DOs obviously learn OMT, and it's a really cool modality. I really personally like OMT. However, it's really important to keep in mind that it's an extra course. It's usually, for a lot of schools, it's a year-long course, all 4 years, has its own exams, it has its own competencies. It does take a lot of extra time to learn this brand new thing that you probably don't have a lot of history or awareness of. You really have to learn the anatomy really well. You have to learn kind of this brand new language of diagnosing. So it is a lot of extra brain power, and it is a lot of extra work. Number two, with that, DO students are required to take the COMLEX exam. It is level 1 and 2. You take it around the same time as you would take USMLE step 1 and 2. And often a lot of DO students actually take both because they still want to be competitive for those joint residencies. So not only are you just taking 2 exams, board exams, but you might even be taking 4 board exams. The COMLEX questions are written by NBOME, and as you guessed it, they do include OMT. So that brings me to my next point, is matching. It's no secret that DO schools were actually made, a lot of them were made to fill the primary care physician gap. So a lot of them are more geared towards primary care. In fact, 57% of practicing DOs are practicing in primary care, which is family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics, compared to about 25% of practicing MDs are in primary care. A lot of people talk about how if you go to a DO school, it's a little bit hard to match into more competitive specialties. And I do think that's true, although it really is not impossible. I do think it's a little bit more of an uphill battle. Not every DO school is created equally, but not a lot of DO schools have an associated academic institution or even an associated hospital. And that can pose a bit of a barrier because some DO schools don't have a lot of like mentorship from specialties, competitive specialties that people are trying to match into, or they don't really have like super readily available research opportunities. You can still seek those out, but it is a little bit of a barrier. Whereas for me, matching into family medicine, all of my professors were family medicine professors or family medicine physicians. I went to conferences with them. We did everything with them. And that really helped me into the matching process. So I can understand that why that would be a little bit of a struggle if you didn't have that readily available to you for a competitive specialty. I don't really have a lot of advice for someone who's trying to match into one of those competitive specialties, but if you are interested in urology, I can send you to my friend Olivia. If you are interested in anesthesiology, please follow my friend Kennedy. And if you're interested in dermatology, you can always follow my friends Derm and Dermer. All of those are DOs who match at very competitive programs in very competitive specialties, so it is possible. Last thing I'll say about matching is that this year was actually the highest DO match. DOs match at a rate of 92.6 compared to MD match, which is 93.5%. As time goes on, DOs do gain a lot more recognition and respect, and it is a lot more possible to match than it was in the past. So my favorite question, why did I go to a DO school? So I actually, like most people, had never heard of a DO. There's not as many DOs in the United States as there are MDs. And so I'd never heard of them until I actually decided that I wanted to go to med school and started exploring like osteopathic medical schools. And my biggest experience was with one of the physicians I worked with in the emergency room. I worked as an ER tech, and I worked with a lot of DOs. And I didn't really think anything of it. I just knew that both of them were basically my bosses. But we actually had one patient who came in with chest pain and difficulty taking a really deep breath. And we did a lot of, obviously, the testing to make sure that he wasn't having anything life-threatening, like a PE or like, why can't I think of the word? Whatever. My gosh, heart attack. I wanted to talk about something else, though. I don't know. Anyways, to make sure he didn't have any of the life-threatening stuff, it turns out he just basically had like costochondritis. And typically the treatment for that is like time, and then also you can provide some pain medications. But the physician that I was working with was a DO, and she diagnosed a somatic dysfunction, which is basically an osteopathic diagnosis. And she was able to he had a rib out of place, popped his rib back into place, and it was like night and day. He was taking a deep breath. He was able to walk out. He didn't need any sort of pain meds. And that was like the first time that I was like, oh, this is really cool. I really like this. I also knew that I really wanted to do family medicine before I even applied to medical school. And I really thought that becoming a DO was going to really benefit me as a family medicine physician. Like we had talked about, I really love the ideas of like treating the body as a unit and really focusing on self regulation with the tools to help the body to do that. And I really thought that OMT would really benefit me as a family medicine physician. And that hasn't changed. I do believe that me personally, will become the physician that I was always meant to be because I went to DO school and because I learned OMT. Even as a medical student, there were so many things that I helped relieve: back pain, neck pain, constipation, sinus pressure. And I was able to teach treatments, easy treatments to patients that they could do on themselves to help relieve that. And that's just like really what I believe medicine should be for. And it was really cool that I was able to provide that because I went to DO school. So all in all, that's why I wanted to go to DO school. I love that I'm a DO. I love the OMT. I think all medical schools have their problems, but I was really happy to end up where I wanted to go. So, last question: should you go to DO school? This might be really controversial. I really actually, if you are only applying to DO school as a backup, I don't think you should apply at all. If you DO and OMT, it's a very specific kind of way to practice medicine. It takes a lot of extra time, it takes a lot of extra buy in, it takes a lot of mental power. Medical school is hard on its own. If you're learning something that you don't really necessarily want to learn and you don't really necessarily plan to practice in the future, that feels like a big waste of time for me. And so, if you are truly only applying to a DO school and you'd be really upset if you only got into DO school instead of an MD school, I don't think you should apply at all. I don't think it's a secret that DOs typically, DO schools will accept a little bit lower stat applicants. That being said, they really focus on the holistic application and they really focus on like life experience. So I went to school with a lot of like non-traditional students or people who took extra gap years. And I really think that that benefited them and our class in the long run. And I do think even though it is an average of lower stats, I still think it's quite difficult to get in because it's focused on a lot more experience, both clinical research and life experience. All in all, I think being a DO is really cool. I really like it. I've really enjoyed my time, my short time of being a DO, and I'm excited to continue to practice as a DO. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments and I will try to answer them. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for being interested in what DOs do, and I'll see you next time.